Hello and welcome to the Armchair Show. I'm your host Tanisha and I'm so thrilled to have you guys here with me today. Today I am joined by two fantastic guests. So why don't we kick off with a short intro for who you are and what you do?
Yes, so hi, my name is Rohan and I've worked in the automotive industry for about a good 2 years now. So I did a placement at the VW Group in Milton Keynes, and then I moved to Singapore to work at Porsche Asia Pacific, and then now Porsche Singapore.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I'm Sean Harris. I'm the Commercial Director of Cox Automotive Retail Group, which covers Code Weavers, Modix, Fleetmaster and RMS. Originally came from the Code Weaver side when I was there for... I think it's 9 years before we got bought by Cox, which was 4 years ago now. And for the last 4 years, I've had the wider group role post Code Weavers.
So you've been in the industry for quite a while then. So for anybody...
Too long.
For anybody that doesn't know you, although I'm sure that's not many, what was your route into the industry? How did you find yourself in this industry?
So that would go back to my early 20s. I think I was 22. And I was working at a recruitment company in Manchester and saw a job advert for a area account manager at Chartered Trust, who, after a number of iterations, are now Black Horse. So I started off in automotive finance, did that for a number of years, worked as a area manager for South Manchester, and then moved into a number of other automotive roles, Capital Bank, Green Flag, Dent Wizard. That took me through to, I think, my mid-30s. And then I'm one of the few people that escaped for a few years. I was 7 years randomly in the ATM industry.
It's rare for somebody to leave for that long.
Yep, it was a really good experience. I was the sales director to start with of an independent ATM company called Cardpoint, and then I took the most random career 360 and became the engineering director, despite knowing absolutely nothing about engineering ATMs. But absolutely love that. That taught me so much. And then one day, I think in my early 40s, I got a phone call from Roland asking if I'd come back, and I joined Code Weavers, and that was 13 years ago now.
And you've never looked back, here ever since.
Yeah.
Perfect. And what about yourself? Or how did you find yourself in the automotive industry? What was your journey like?
Well, I was studying at Newcastle, and it was a 3-year degree course, but you actually now have the opportunity to do a placement, so between your second and third year. And I was applying, and I always liked cars, so I decided to apply to most of the OEMs, and I managed to get the VW Group. Yeah, so I got in through there. I really liked the experience, and I decided to continue within. Yeah.
Amazing. And what were you studying?
Marketing and management. Yeah.
So in terms of your career and your background, you have been in a few different roles that you've just described there. I mean, for anybody that is listening and that is watching this episode today, that is thinking, I really like the idea of being in a career and a job role like yours, is there any advice, any tips that you might give somebody today that might be, 10 years behind you on their journey or is just starting out in the industry?
I think firstly, it is a great industry. I've loved working in it, and even though I was out of it for 7 years, the fact that I came back, there are so many areas you can go in automotive, and I think that's what makes it exciting. You've got the actual physical side of it, the engineering. You've got more and more digital roles available. You've got a whole array of suppliers that you can go and work in. Obviously, I started in finance and did a bit of insurance and a few other things, but it's an industry that doesn't stand still. And that's the one thing that was most exciting for me. In that shorter period, I wonder if you've seen the same as well.
Yep.
It moves so quickly. And if you're not in the industry, I think some people look at it and they've still got that old, it's car sales. But I don't think until you're actually in it, you realise just how technically advanced compared to some other industries automotive really is. And it changes quickly. And I think that would be my advice to anybody looking to get in is absolutely, don't think about any of the preconceptions that people may have about the industry. It's super exciting.
And you've been in the industry a lot less, so for 2 years.
Yeah.
So you obviously had a perception of the industry before you came in, which was obviously a good one because you wanted to be in the industry. How does it compare to what that perception was? Is it what you thought it would be?
To an extent, I think when I joined in, it was all about electrification. And that's kind of been the way it's been. Going forward, different markets, I guess, they take electrification slower. So the UK market, it's not moving as fast as it seems. But when I was in Singapore, it's, started at maybe 2% and now it's at 40%. So it's a lot faster. And it's kind of fit into what I've been told, I guess, or been exposed to.
I'm guessing that there are reasons for that, do you think? The 40%?
So in Singapore, the government has a lot of subsidies. You can get almost 35,000, 40,000 off a new car. But if you're buying just a basic petrol car, there will be a levy on it. And it could go up to 15,000, 20,000 just on your normal petrol car. Even hybrids now don't even get incentives. Maybe 5,000 off. So EVs are really being pushed. The infrastructure is sort of government managed. So that they're on the ball with it. So, it's definitely moving faster.
I mean, 40,000 off sounds like a lot, but you were saying before this about how cars are so expensive in Singapore in comparison to the UK.
Yes. So, a basic Golf here might be 30 to 40k pounds. In Singapore, it's 100 grand pounds.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a very complicated system, but it's basically 0% growth in the Singapore market. So, to buy a car, you need to deregister a car. And to own a car, you need a certificate of entitlement. So that allows you to own a car for 10 years. And you need to bid for it and buy it. And that's currently going at almost 115,000 just for the piece of paper. Wow. Not the car, just the paper. So very complicated market. But then again, Singapore is a tiny island. So you really have to limit the growth, the car market. Yeah, if not, there's just going to be congestion on every street.
Out of interest, if it's zero sum, what happens to the vehicles so everybody that buys a new vehicle, vehicle's got to exit the market.
Yes.
So where do they go?
Well, the certificate's only valid for 10 years.
Okay.
So once that 10 years is up, you either deregister the car and it goes to the scrapyard or to another market. And then you buy a new car. Or if you want to extend your car for another 10 years, you buy the certificate again on the current price. So if you want your car's like, let's say 9 years and 11 months now, you're going to need to pay another 100 grand just to keep your car.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very different.
Yes. And out of curiosity, in terms of, I guess, average household income and salary in Singapore, how does that compare? Is that affordable to the average household to be able to do that?
I would say the average income is high in Singapore, but most families don't own a car. The public transport system is very efficient, and it usually covers, I would say, a good part of most of the island. But if they do, it would be one car per household, I would say, unless, you're much of the upper class, then maybe 2 or 3. But
it's so wildly different, isn't it?
It is wildly different.
Here. So focusing back on the UK market, I guess, can you tell us a little bit about the challenges in the buy-in process at the moment, in particular with car finance, and some of those challenges that dealers might be facing at the moment? We were talking about a few before the show.
Yeah, well, there's an important month coming up. That'll be the month of August, where the Supreme Court should be ruling on the issues around commission. The market has had that cloud hanging over it for a while, and it'd be good to get a completion of that. However, I think for the market's sake and the wider UK economy, I think we're all hoping for a result that rolls back some of the elements of the appeals court. I think they took an issue with discretionary commission, which was harsh for me at the time anyways, and best described as everybody who's operating under a regulatory framework and a legal framework created by the current Consumer Credit Act and Consumer Credit Directive, which was taken on by the FCA, those rules were in place at the time and people were operating within them. The rules have then been updated, tightened, changed, and they're being retrospectively punished against new rules. It's almost like you have a 30-mile-an-hour zone, you change it to 20-mile-an-hour zone, and then fine everybody that did 30 legally for the prior 10 years, which feels a bit harsh. But I think the reality is people were willing to take the hit on discretionary commission, even though an awful lot of people weren't disadvantaged. There were some that did. However, the extension to the fiduciary duty and for all commissions to be disclosed and that opening that potential floodgate, that not only risks the car finance sector, but if you think about the applications that could be put on for other industries as well, that's almost like saying if you've taken a payment for anything and you have not disclosed it to the person that's bought the ultimate, that's against the rules now, and you need to recompense. That has super wide-ranging implications. So my hope is, and I think most of the lenders is, we can take commission disclosure on the chin. The FCA, our own bodies, the FLA and others, we're going to adopt that anyway. And we've looked at the numbers that we're seeing through points of sale and all the different avenues of business that we do. And since disclosure became a thing, the dial's not really moved. Your customers aren't not doing finance because commissions are disclosed. So that's had no impact. So I think we're all quite happy to keep that going, and it's transparent. If discretionary commissions ruled against, then that's one thing. Yes, it's a little bit damaging, but if they keep the current the ruling in its entirety, that's going to be super damaging for lenders. And you can see where then the Santanders of this world and others have gone, this is a very difficult market to actually operate in, full stop. So, could lenders exit? Possibly, maybe even likely. That will then disrupt retailers in that, one, any lender's going to need to make this money back. Ultimately, that's going to cost the consumer because interest rates and margins are going to have to improve to try and pay back the losses they've just taken. But also, if people start to exit, choice. There's a lack of consumer choice at point-of-sale finance, which, again, won't be good. So, I'm hoping and still feeling positive that that some of those provisions that were a bit draconian get removed in August, but that is undoubtedly a big date for us.
Do you think there's a chance that it could create some opportunity, whether that's in terms of for dealers or software advancements in the industry?
I think for new entrant lenders, at this moment in time, it's a good time because if you're a new entrant lender, one, you're not going to be burdened by legacy technology that some of the more established lenders are. Two, you're not going to be burdened by the threat of a big capital outflow through repayments for prior actions. So actually, you can be super competitive. So that is the upside, but I still think that would be detrimental to see some of the historic legacy lenders that have done a fantastic job, not just for retailers but also for consumers, to be adversely affected overly harshly, in my opinion, in August.
And I guess not just on the finance point of view, but just in general on the industry, a question for both of you really. Do you think that as retailers, finance lenders, anyone in the automotive industry, we're really embracing that change and digital transformation in the way that other industries are? Do you think there's wider opportunity for kind of embracing that within the automotive industry?
Yeah, I look at where we've come. My time at Code Weavers over the last sort of 13 years. Where we've come in the last 13 years has been amazing. I look at other markets, and I've got a few international responsibilities as well, and Code Weavers is internationalised, and we're seeing other markets. The UK market's incredibly advanced from a digital perspective, even against the US market, but certainly against other European markets. The UK's automotive sector in terms of digital capabilities and the extent that a customer can interact and what they can do, it's in tremendous shape. And as a UK industry, UK suppliers, but also driven by retailers and OEMs wanting to become more digitally adept, I think that's a source of great pride for the UK compared to other markets. I don't know whether you've seen the same. You've obviously been to Singapore, whether you feel that way as well.
I would say from my limited exposure so far, I think most OEMs are definitely getting more digitalized. But I would say maybe not as quick as some of the startups or the newcomers. So like you see Tesla, their interface is significantly better. Some of the Chinese EVs that are coming in, BYD, they've definitely got that edge. So maybe it's kind of like playing catch up with them at the moment. Yeah.
Where do you think the automotive industry is going to be in 5, maybe 10 years' time? What do you think, I guess, the future, especially from a tech point of view, is?
It's a really interesting question, and it is, because you've got a lot of trends, but we've also seen some previous trends actually not come to fruition. Probably the biggest one was mobility. If we were having this podcast 5 years ago, we'd have probably started with mobility. Is mobility going to take over? And it really hasn't. Mobility in the UK just hasn't been a thing, or the US. A lot of the startups, they failed. Culturally, it was always going to have an issue because 17-year-olds don't say, I want to use my first car. They say, I want to have my first car. But it's ridiculously expensive. And actually, it was a trendy name, but mobility has existed for decades in the form of daily rental. So if you need a car and you haven't got one, you need one for a day, you can rent one anyway. So some of these trends come and then fade away. One that won't is electrification. I think we can all accept that. And I think that UK specifically, we've got a challenge in electrification because you talk about the percentage adoption in Singapore. We just don't have the infrastructure. We just don't. We've got just millions of houses that are very difficult to get charging points into. Terraced houses on main streets. We've got some really big challenges, but people are going to have to face into that challenge and overcome them because it's a direction of travel that's not going to stop. So the digital train will carry on rumbling. I think we'll get better and better. Agency, that'll be the interesting one to see how that plays out. That was going to happen. Some people have done it. Mercedes, obviously, but you've got brands now bailing out of it. For me, one of the biggest drivers for that is the challenge of part exchange. That direct sales and digital completion is difficult. The technology does not currently exist to do a super accurate and stand on part exchange valuation completely digitally online. So that's a challenge we need to overcome to take the next leap, I think, technically. And I think that's also held up agency to a degree because that role of accurate part exchange valuation and disposal of the trade-in vehicle is done brilliantly by retailers. And I don't think the OEMs have found a way of actually solving that. So we'll have to wait and see whether that technical hurdle gets crossed in the next 5 years, because that could obviously start a big leap forward again.
Agree on a lot of points. I would say, 5 to 10 years, people thought hydrogen was going to take off. That didn't really go anywhere, did it? So I would say EV is the way to go, apparently, especially if there's government legislation pushing for it. That's definitely the right path. Not so sure how the UK is going to handle the next 5 years, but I would say, markets, not even just Singapore, there are other markets that have really transitioned to EV and are way ahead, like China and Norway. But yeah, they used government incentives. So I would see electrification as the way. I would say, different markets, different challenges. UK, getting your full charge range on an EV in winter, that's tough. In Singapore, we don't have that kind of weather. It's 30 degrees all year round. You live in an island, you're always near a charging point. It's about an hour's drive from each end. So we don't really have range anxiety. But yeah, UK is definitely different on that.
Yeah, I think the other big challenge for EV is used car values. especially in the UK. 90% of new vehicles are funded by a residual value product in one way or the other, whether it be PCP, whether it be PCH. And what we're seeing is a weakness in used car electric values, which then impacts new car ability to look super competitive against the petrol, diesel versions, etc. So I think that's a problem that needs to be solved as well, because as a market, we are very heavily residual value product based, whereas others aren't necessarily at that percentage. Last stats, and we were approaching 95%, which is huge compared to other markets where it's sub 10.
I think I'll touch on that also. Is some of the used EVs. I guess you'll go into a market, you would buy a 10-year-old petrol car, but would you buy a 10-year-old electric car with maybe 150 miles of range? I think the tech is moving too fast and it's growing too fast. That products 6-7 years ago seem kind of very dated.
Do you think there's a fear there for buyers, but where they don't know what that battery is going to be like at 10 years old?
Yeah. It's kind of like your iPhone battery. After 4 years, it would say 70% health. So I guess, people say maybe that's the same for a car. Yeah.
Well, that was something we discussed in our last episode, actually. And that exact same analogy of, your iPhone, that after having an iPhone after a year that it no longer keeps charging the same way, right? So I think as consumers, we all have that perception of anything else battery, it's going to have the same problem. And there was a gentleman discussing that on the last episode. And the data that he was showing, I'm in the industry and I was shocked actually how well the batteries keep up and how little they degrade over time. And my perception was entirely wrong. So I guess there's the issue of reality and the perception as a customer, because you hear the word battery and we're so used to anything that you're into that habit of charging, right? Yeah. It's the same as, there's this belief that you would need to charge the car overnight every single night because, that's what you charge your phone in, exactly that same mentality. So there's that mentality of, you get home, you plug it in, you charge. Yeah. And I think that that's probably one of the challenges is in the industry, isn't it? It's that perception. I don't think customers yet know an electric vehicle in 10 years how well that battery is, because there's not many people that have had an electric car for that long to really know what that looks like.
Yeah, so I think there is an education piece there. You're right, because everybody's going to associate a battery with what they know, which is iPhone. And you're right, they just don't last. So there's probably an education piece. You're right, there aren't many 10-year-old electric vehicles, so we don't really know. But there is an increasing infrastructure in battery refurbishment. In fact, Cox made an investment in Spears New Technologies, which is a battery refurbishment and repair company, and building the logistics behind that. And I think there's, that's an area that needs to be there. We need to make people more aware as well if we're going to increase the adoption of electric vehicles. So there's a fair bit of work to do. I also think there was a few balls that were dropped by one or two OEMs when they started to bring out new electric models against traditional models. Let's say they weren't all as aesthetically appealing as maybe they could have made them.
Can't imagine which ones you're talking about.
In fairness, there's a few that bought out one or two vehicles that you're like, okay. But I think that started to be addressed. I like some of the new entrants. I don't know, BYD.
Oh yeah.
I really like the look of some of their vehicles. I think.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah, that's a big improvement.
I think a Moda is also a really great one that I like. Yeah.
Really nice looking cars.
Yeah, and it's the interiors too, and the tech that comes with it. Yeah, I think they're
a great price for the amount of tech that you get.
Yeah, definitely.
We've just accidentally put a little advert out, haven't we, for BYD and a Moda between us.
Yeah.
For anyone that's looking to get into the industry, what advice would you give anybody that's perhaps not in the industry yet, but is considering it, is perhaps on Indeed or any other job listing right now and considering their application? What advice would you give?
You can go first because you. What advice did you give yourself when you jumped in?
Well, I would say if you're in university, definitely do a placement year. Take that 1 year out. Figure out whether the automotive industry is something you want to be in. You know, it's 12-month program, so you can take the risk in your career path. And at the end, you know, it opens up opportunities, because I feel like most companies right now, even though they want university grads, they also want people with experience, real life experience, you know, something even as basic as Excel. So doing that in your, you know, placement year, you'll be more prepared for the outside world. I think that's the best advice I could give.
Just have an open mind to the sheer number of opportunities that exist in automotive. There's whatever your interest, whether it be software, whether it be engineering, whether it be sales, marketing, there is a place in automotive. It's so diverse, so wide ranging in terms of the skills that exist in this industry. Just have an open mind to it. It's also an incredibly portable industry that once you're in it, there's lots and lots of opportunities. It's not like going in something and there's only one way to go in your career. There are so many. Did I ever see myself as a software person in my 20s? No, I was so far away from that. I couldn't even program my Spectrum 48. So I just sort of ended up here, almost by accident, definitely not by design. But that's the beauty of the automotive industry, is it can take you in so many different places.
Yeah.
It's exciting to be at your age, entering it. It's an exciting time, I think.
But you'll never leave now, as you've learned in this talk. Once you're in the industry, that's it
yeah,
forever, isn't it? Really?
Stuck,
yeah. I don't think either of us could go anywhere now.
No.
Well, I've just left, so I'm
But not
not completely.
Yeah, so
Yes,
not really. You can never leave completely.
Yeah. It's always going to draw you back in. Yeah.
Yeah,
The other thing I'd say is as well is you don't necessarily need to be a petrol head or obsessed with cars.
very true.
Because I'm not.
No, neither am I.
My change of car normally comes when the wife shouts at me and says, that has got to go. It's the industry that's more exciting than the actual end product of the motor vehicle for me.
Well, it's the people, isn't it, that make the industry, and rather than the product, so to speak. You don't necessarily need to love the product, be a petrol head, in order to love the industry and love how it works.
Yeah, and because so few people leave, you do end up knowing people for a long time.
Yes.
And that creates a community, and that's the other thing I love about automotive.
It's such a big yet such a small community all at the same time, isn't it? So there's so many of us, yet somehow everybody knows everyone.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank
Armchair Marketing.